In July of 2006, a lieutenant general, the chief of the National Guard Bureau, was addressing the NAACP about diversity in the military. Diversity. And in the course of his speech, he lumped atheists and agnostics together with bigots, and then paraphrased the old atheist in a foxhole canard, saying they suddenly lose all that when their life is on the line, and something that they lived their whole life believing gets thrown out the door. As a first lieutenant, I filed a formal EO complaint against this three-star general. I drove to Columbus, Ohio to hand-deliver the complaint, to get a signature of receipt, and to ensure that everything was in order. But after receiving and signing for my complaint from my state office, the National Guard Bureau EO just sat on it. They didn't forward it to the Department of the Army Inspector General, as was required. After a few calls, I learned that the Department of the Army Inspector General never even received the complaint, didn't know I ever filed one. When they contacted the National Guard Bureau's office, they didn't have it. They either lost it or they tossed it. They had to come back to my state office and ask them to resend it. Once they had the second copy, they lied about its status, and they asked for a third copy. The NGB office tried to dissuade me by asking me to resubmit it if I really still wanted to go ahead with this. They claimed it wasn't signed, that it didn't state how I was harmed, and did not suggest a remedy, all of which were untrue, which I can document. But I didn't quit. I jumped through all their hoops, and again I waited, and again I heard nothing. This time, turns out, it was the Inspector General's office that was the problem. Without giving me any answer, they had sent it back to the National Guard Bureau for administrative action, which it turns out means no action at all. When asked about getting my written response, a step required for formal EO complaints, I was informed that to receive anything related to this EO complaint, my own EO complaint, I had to file for it under the Freedom of Information Act. So I did. And about a month later, I received a notice that my request for documents was partially denied. What I got was a memorandum that was heavily redacted, 27 places blacked out. My state EO officer told me she couldn't even read the signature of the person at the National Guard Bureau who had signed for the complaint package. No name, no accountability, and no action. So the next day, I submitted my written resignation as an officer. Before the process was even complete, I learned that my state's EO conference ran this training scenario. It was my story. A lieutenant files a formal EO complaint against the general officer about comments that there were no atheists in foxholes. And after some discussion about whether this was or wasn't religious discrimination among the group, the EO-NCO told the group that it was not religious discrimination because atheism isn't religion. So they were actually training unit-level EO reps to refuse complaints at the lowest possible level. So then you have a case like Jeremy Hall's, and the Army and the Justice Department get involved and try to have it thrown out of court, claiming that it should have been handled internally by the chain of command in the EO and the IG system. But I'm here to tell you that those systems are broken. There are systemic problems which prevent some soldiers from getting due process internally. And if external channels are not available, then there is no redress for discrimination. This is why the proposals from Lori's and Jason's group are so important. We need an overhaul, and it needs to come from the top down. I believe we need to educate chaplains about where the line is and why it is so offensive when they cross it. I understand chaplains need to be free to express their beliefs from the pulpit. They couldn't do their job without that. But this is my issue. When they're addressing the media as commissioned officers, as representatives of the United States Army, they have no business disparaging their own soldiers on the basis of religion. We also need to educate EO reps about what constitutes discrimination and what soldiers' rights are. And we definitely need an effective reporting system that ensures that EO complaints are handled properly. Atheists don't ask for much. We don't have religious dietary restrictions which need to be accommodated. We don't need time off to attend services. We don't need chaplains to perform ceremonies or rituals for us. We don't need holy books printed up and distributed to us at taxpayer expense. What we do ask is that our leaders refrain from publicly disparaging us, from calling us liars and cowards and lesser soldiers, simply because we don't share their belief in the supernatural. Shouldn't be a big thing, not too much to ask. Thank you.